Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. My name is Nikita, and on this channel we chat about inclusive reading, diverse reading, with a focus on BIPOC stories, especially South Asian stories, both in fiction and in real life. So you can expect a lot of book chats, book recommendations, as well as my podcast called Brown People Problems. Thank you for being here for today's video. I wanted to share with you just a few books, that I've had the chance to pick up recently in the last few weeks and just do a bit of a book haul. As always, if you like this video, if you like my presence online, please feel free to like this video as well as subscribe if you haven't already. Actually, my stats are showing me that most of you that are watching this video aren't actually subscribed, so it would be great to get that number up. If you can hit that subscribe button, please do so. All right, so let's get started. So I have a huge stack of physical books. This is just about half of it. And I have some ebooks as well that I bought on my Kobo, my e-reader. Some of these books on here are ones that I had been looking forward to for quite some time. They were on my list of books to buy, and then others were just books that I saw at the bookstore and I picked them up and I really enjoyed them. And I thought I would really enjoy them, so I grabbed them. And we'll see. Some of them are a little bit outside of my preference or my comfort zone, but if you've seen my last video, which I'll link up here, the Get Uncomfortable tag, we're all about stepping outside of our comfort zone with reading, with fiction, and getting uncomfortable. So first up, I have The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. I have heard a lot about this book. It's been everywhere, but I haven't had a chance to pick it up. I haven't actually read anything else by Sarah Penner. But this seems like a historical fiction set in London, Regency era. You know how much I love that setting. And this seems like there's a secret network of women in the 18th century who have an apothecary shop, and it's a shop that basically sells poisons or concoctions basically to help women use against the oppressive men in their lives. That just sounds amazing. I love any type of historic stories about historical or present day feminism. It really just resonates with me. So this sounds really interesting. Sounds like there's going to be a lot of intrigue, a lot of mystery, and it just sounds very spellbinding. It sounds really exciting. I'm excited to get into this. Up next, after that, we have Now You See Us by Bali Kaur Jaswal. She's the same author who wrote erotic stories for Punjabi widows. I did a whole interview with her. I was so lucky to sit down with her for my podcast episode. I will link it up here. And we just spoke about what her process was, her writing process, and just writing about that particular niche and that diaspora. So I picked up her next book. This recently came out, I want to say earlier this month, earlier in April. And this actually is not a South Asian story. I think this is set in Singapore, and it involves East Asian characters. Somebody's describing it as Crazy Rich Asians Meet the Help, which sounds great. But it's basically about Filipina domestic workers in Singapore, and it seems like there is a murder in Singapore, which brings a lot of attention to domestic workers in general. And a Filipina has been arrested for murdering her female employer. And so it seems like it's a murder mystery. It's going to take you through a group of domestic workers, Filipina women, who are going to take it upon themselves to really kind of explore what really happened and break it down, because they don't think their fellow worker murdered their female employer. It really seems like off the bat that there's going to be a lot of great conversations about class and status and privilege, and how all of that intertwines with how we treat people and this culture of domestic workers. So I'm excited to get into this as well. All right, after this we have The X Talk by Rachel Lynn Solomon. I have never read anything by this author, but this is basically a rom-com. The way that I understand it is two public radio co-hosts come together and they start a show which is called The X Talk, where they share relationship advice on air, and you know, I guess they fall in love with one another, pretty standard rom-com stuff. But I picked this up because I really enjoyed the setting of like a radio show host. I haven't read much in that setting, and it's also set in Seattle, which is a city that I really enjoyed. So to be honest, I also just picked this up because there's so much hype around this. I guess I am guilty of picking up books sometimes that just have so much hype and pomp around them, and I give into that sometimes. Alright, up next, another book that I hauled is Well-Behaved Indian Women by Soumya Dave. You know that I read this book a few months ago. I will link the review or the discussion about this above, but I decided to haul this. I enjoyed it. Again, I didn't love it as much as everybody else did online in the book community, in the bookish community, but I really enjoyed it, and I'm going to be reading more by this author, and I decided to pick this up. This is a multi-generational story of two Indian American women, and then their Indian mother back in South Asia. But it follows like your main protagonist. I believe her name is Simran. She's like this like brown millennial Indian American woman who's kind of just navigating like romance crisis, career crisis, things like that. And it really just follows a story of her mom before her, and what are some of the circumstances that these women had to overcome to be where they are today. It's a great story just about like family dynamics, cultural dynamics. It's an interesting one. Hi everyone, it's Editing Nikita. I wanted to actually let you know that I have started my own virtual book club on Fable, which is an app. I will link the invitation and the link to the book club below. But if you would like to read with me, we are going to be starting What a Happy Family by Soumya Dave on May 1st. So you have a few days to sign on and start with us if you would like. Thanks. Up next we have Twin Crowns. This is by Catherine Doyle and Catherine Weber. This is basically just a YA fantasy, not much to it. If you saw my last video, the Get Uncomfortable tag, I was talking about how I have always really been into fantasy growing up and just, you know, being like a teenager. And I'm feeling as though I would want to get back into it. So I picked this up. I also picked up another fantasy that I'll show you in a bit on my e-reader. But this has, again, a lot of hype around it. I read the back. It seems intriguing enough. Essentially, I guess it's about two twin sisters who are separated at birth, but who are both heirs to the throne or the crown. And I guess the story is they come together as adults and fight for that crown. I also don't like to go into my books knowing too much, because I think then I start to form like my own theories about what's going to happen, and it takes away from the surprise element for me. Up next, we have a rom-com, a queer rom-com. It's called Delilah Green Doesn't Care. And again, everyone has been talking about this book, so I decided to pick it up. But I've only ever read one other queer romance before, and that's Red, White, and Royal Blue. So I decided to pick this up, again, to just like diversify my reading, but also just see what this is about. It seems like an enemies to lovers sort of a context. So I'm excited to get into this. All right, up next we have Hello by Shema Benembarik. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this word on YouTube, but this is the book. And this is about the intimate lives of Muslim women in Northern America. This was just so intriguing for me when I saw this. It's basically a bunch of different stories. I believe it's like 6 stories. So you follow like 6 independent stories of Muslim women of different identities, different sexual identities in North America, Canada, and the US that are just navigating their sexuality. And their sexuality in, I guess, like non-traditional, monogamous, or marital relationships. I love books like this that are either like anthologies or that like take like a really complex topic and they like talk about it. And just to read you a little bit of the back because it sounds really interesting. It's about the 6 deeply personal stories in this book attempt to answer the question of what it's like when immigrants and children of immigrants set about pursuing an open and active sex life on a more sexually liberated continent. So you've got a character who is Nigerian, you've got someone who's an exotic dancer and a sex worker, and it's really just women from a very diverse set of background. But it's socioeconomic background, cultural, religious, and has like a really frank feminist contribution. And it's hoping to advance Muslim sexual education and pleasure. This stuff sounds right up my alley, and you can see I have a very diverse taste. I think I was just talking about a rom-com, but I'm excited to get into this. The author is a Moroccan-Canadian journalist, and I want to say this is her first one. I'm not sure, but I will keep you posted on how this goes. This was rated Indigo. Indigo's like the Canadian, I guess, Barnes & Noble, our main bookseller, and it was rated the staff pick of the month, and it just seems incredibly intriguing. I imagine that it's not going to be a read that you just kind of binge in a go. I imagine I'm probably just going to read it a chapter at a time and then go away from it and reflect on what I've read and then come back and read the next story. So I imagine it's going to take me a little bit more time, but I will report back on how this is. Okay, up next we have Romantic Comedy by Curtis Sittenfeld. I have only ever read one other book, which is Eligible by Curtis Sittenfeld. I think I have it somewhere back there, which was a Pride and Prejudice retelling I read like many years ago. And this is her new one. It's everywhere. It's a Reese book club pick as well. So I'm excited to get into this. I believe this is basically a love story between a writer at what is essentially SNL, but they give it a different name here, but Saturday Night Live, and another actor who comes on as a guest for one of the shows. I started reading it, and I gotta say I'm not 100% into it yet, so I'm going to put it aside because I got interrupted there by a phone call and my alarm. But I have started reading this. I don't feel super into it, so I'm going to put it aside because I actually have really high hopes from this book, and I really hope that my expectations aren't unrealistic or they don't, sort of fall short, but I'm excited. I'm excited for this one. If any of you have read this, let me know your thoughts, but there's so much hype around this, and sometimes that's my fear with books with a lot of hype is I hype them up more in my head, and the hype that they're receiving really inflates my expectations of them, and then they just fall short for me, and then I get disappointed. So I try to be really mindful when I pick up something that has a lot of buzz around it, and which is why I'm going to wait till I really feel it. I'm going to pick this up. Okay, up next we have Partners in Crime by Alicia Roy. Alicia Roy is a Indian American author, and I have never read anything by her before, but this book is described as Indian matchmaking meets date night, and it sounds really fun. But I think this is about two exes that find themselves together again. It says here they get kidnapped together in Vegas, so it sounds again just like over the top and fun. So I'm looking forward to this one. Next up I have To Love and to Loathe by Martha Waters. If you remember, I recently read To Have and to Hoax, which is the first part of the series by the same author. This is a Regency era historical fiction romance set in early 1800s. I believe To Love and to Loathe is a story of now the other friend in this group. I enjoyed the first one. I got really frustrated with it by the end, but I still wanted to pick this up. I believe this is again enemies to lovers because their story kind of started at the end of the first book, so they really don't like each other. They're enemies, and I think they try to come up with like a friends with benefits sort of a relationship, and we'll see where it goes. I don't know how historically accurate a lot of this stuff is. Sometimes I read historical romance or just any historical fiction or watch historical fiction, and I find myself wondering if somebody from that time could today read books set in that time or watch shows set in that time, would they say that it was quite historically correct? We don't know, but they're fun anyway. Okay, up next we have The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. I bought this last week and I finished it in 2 days, and this was the example of when a book is so hyped up, it falls short for me. And this book sort of did. It was very predictable. I'm not going to give much away, but I have read this plotline before. If I hadn't read like the other book that this reminds me of, which is The Last Mrs. Parrish, I would have been really revolutionized by this idea, but it was fine, it was fun, it was a quick read, but it was predictable. So I'm not sure if I'll pick up the second one, but I did haul this recently. Up next we have Pineapple Street by Jenny Jackson. Again, another book with a lot of talk surrounding it. This seems like a family drama, a wealthy family drama. I love those. They're just really intriguing. I don't know too much about it, but it just seems like family drama in a setting with like a lot of generational wealth and privilege. So I'm looking forward to it. The last physical book that I have on here is a massive one. This is Fall of Giants by Ken Follett. This is a first one to a brand new series, which is a century trilogy. I have read his Pillars of the Earth series as well, which is 4 massive books. They're about 1,000 pages each. They're back here. I'm not going to pick them up. And I really enjoyed it. They're all historical fiction and they're very like political. So they're not everyone's cup of tea, but wow, I just love how immersive of like an atmosphere and a world he creates are based around real historical events that have happened, but the characters are fictional, if that makes sense. So this is set in England. It's just before World War I, and his books, because you can see they're massive, they tend to be multi-generational. So they follow the same set of families across generations through life-changing historical events. So this is just before World War I. We have an aristocratic family in here. We've got the servants as well. We've got some miners. So it's really going to be interesting to see how their lives change with the industrialization that happened after World War I, and just the fall of giants, the fall of the aristocracy that happened. I'm almost 300 pages in, but that's just a quarter of the way in because it's over 1,000 pages. But I imagine I'm going to read all 3 of these over the span of the whole year, slowly, but I did haul this recently. I'm excited. If anyone has read this series, let me know. I want to hear your thoughts because I really, really loved Pillars of the Earth. That's what was on my physical TBR. Now I bought a few books on my Kobo just with sales and whatnot. And the first one that I wanted to mention was The Rise of the School for Good and Evil by Salman Chenani. If you've heard of this, it's like a YA series. There's a Netflix movie as well, The School for Good and Evil. I enjoy my YA fantasies from time to time. So this is, I guess, the prequel to the first book, and I have those up there. I really enjoyed. I think I read out of the 4 in the series, I read the first 2 or 3, and then I kind of got tired of it, but I wanted to see what the prequel was like, so I got that. Next up, I have The Brilliant Life of Eudora Honeysett by Annie Lyons. Again, I've heard a lot about this. Someone said this book was similar to Eleanor Oliphant is Fine, and I absolutely love that book. I really enjoy reading about like quirky female characters who are just trying to do life differently. So I picked this up. I haven't started it yet. Next up, I got The Vanishing Half by BRIT. I finished it. I really enjoyed this book. I'm going to say I give it 5 stars. It's probably one of my top books that I have read. If you're looking for a really good immersive read about a conversation on like class, privilege, race, check it out, because it follows a story in the 60s of 2 Black twin sisters who they're really, really light skinned, so they can pass off as white, and one goes off to live her life as a Black woman and the other goes off to live her life as a white woman. And it's just the identities of race that they have can create such different lives for them. That was really, really interesting to read. Another book that I bought is Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute by Talia Hibbert. I've heard a lot about this author and her romance books, And when I picked this up, I really just fell in love with the blurb that you read about the author in the back, because I think the author said something along the lines of she likes to write about Black folks and love stories because marginalized people deserve happy endings too, or something to that effect. And that really just resonated with my personal values, and so I picked this up. It is a YA romance, that's what I understand, and I've started it. It's quite fun so far. Up next we have Well, That Was Unexpected by Jessie Q. Sutanto. This is the author of Diary for Aunties and Vera Wong's Unsolicited Guide for Murderers. This is her YA novel. It's not new, it's been around for quite some time. I know absolutely nothing about it, so I can't tell you too much about it. I just saw it. I saw the name of the author. I've liked everything else that she's written so far, so I picked it up. After that, I got these Hollow Vows by Lexi Ryan. Again, this is part one of a YA fantasy series, or a fantasy duology, not a series. I finished it. It was fun. It reminded me actually a lot of ACOTAR, Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. And I think someone had commented on Goodreads as well that it has like a very similar vibe. So I enjoyed it. It was fun. I'll probably pick up the second one. Next up, I got The Kiss Curse by Erin Sterling. This is, I believe, the second part to The X-Hex. I haven't even read The X-Hex, but I bought it because it was on sale. And I think I would like to get to it at some point this year, probably around the fall, October time, around Halloween. After that, I got Cover Story by Susan Rigetti. I've never heard about this author, and I've never heard anyone talk about this book, but I saw this and it looked really interesting. I believe it's a story that follows like a woman who gets conned, and you know, we see all these like Tinder Swindler and or Tinder Swindler, and we see all of these documentaries about these con artists who are able to con women out of millions or thousands of hundreds of thousands of dollars, and a lot of us judge those women. So I believe this is from the perspective of a woman who does get swindled, and you kind of see like her thought process and what kind of led her to trust this person. So I imagine it's going to be interesting, fun, fast-paced, and really quite illuminating. After that, I have the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. This is my first Grady Hendrix, and I don't really read a lot of books that have like that Southern America or the Midwest setting, but I believe this is a book club that starts hunting vampires once there's a vampire that comes to their town. So it sounds hilarious, and I've heard that Grady Hendrix is very, really good with his craft, and a really famous book by him is like My Best Friend's Exorcism, which I believe actually happens in the same town as this book is set in. Haven't had a chance to read it, haven't even started this one, but I will start it soon. If you've read it, let me know what to expect, because this just sounds really interesting. It sounds like a really unique context. All right, we're almost through. So the next book I picked up was Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. Again, heard a lot about it. Everyone's talking about it. It's, I believe, a YA like romance, but people are really describing it as life-changing. I believe it's like a video game setting where these two, our main characters, are like video game developers, and follows them from their teenagehood into their adulthood. I believe it's something like that. It sounds interesting. And then I got Honey and Spice by Bolu Babalola. Again, another Reese book club pick. It's supposed to be really good, like a really good BIPOC romance. I'm not letting myself know too much more about the book anyway. I just want to go in and be surprised. But I believe it's our female character, our female protagonist is a podcast. So I believe it includes like a lot of podcasting culture. So I'm excited to read more about that. And the last book that I picked up is In a New York Minute by Kate Spencer. Not read a Kate Spencer before. It sounded interesting. I think it has like a lot of like chosen family aspect. It has like a chosen family aspect. It's like a sort of I guess like a slower rom-com. It has opposites attract trope, found family, an adorable meet disaster. So some of those tropes that I think I'll enjoy. Oh, so that's it, everyone. That was a lot. Those were the books that I picked up in the last few weeks. That's a lot of books to pick up in a month. I want to say I need to step back and do some reflection on how many books I'm buying. But all of these are pretty much on promotion, especially the e-reader ones. Those are like $1.99, which is why I just love shopping on the Kobo. But regardless, that's a lot of books, and I will probably have to come up with some sort of a ban on buying more books. But those are the books that I have read, or those are the books that I have bought recently. If you enjoyed this video, if you have any tips for me on how to curb this book buying habit, please share your thoughts with me down below. I'm sure many of you watching this have been in a similar space. Again, if you like this video, if you like my presence here in helping you diversify your reading and just challenge yourself and get outside your comfort zone a little bit, leave a comment below, like this video, and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in my next one.